For most of your life, you've probably been taught to chase approval, chase love, chase recognition, chase the person who doesn't see your worth, as if somehow their validation will finally make you whole. And yet, the harder you chase, the more you feel like you're the one coming up short. It's exhausting, isn't it? That feeling of running after people who don't value you, as if they hold the key to your happiness. But here's the truth. They're not the prize, you are. The real value doesn't come from someone choosing you. It comes from you choosing yourself. You are the one carrying the potential, the strength, the energy, the vision. You are the one who has the power to create, to grow, to transform. And the moment you stop acting like someone else's acceptance is the trophy, and you start living like your life is the gift, everything changes. Because when you stand in your own worth, when you embody that certainty, you stop begging for seats at tables where you never belonged. You stop handing out discounts on your value. You stop shrinking yourself just to be seen. Instead, you step fully into who you are and watch how the world begins to respond to you. You've been taught your whole life to run after things, after people, after opportunities, as if they hold the key to your happiness. But here's the truth most people don't want to face. The moment you put someone else or something else on a pedestal, you automatically put yourself beneath it. You tell yourself, they're the prize. If I can win them, if I can get their approval, if I can earn their attention, then I'll finally feel enough. And that's the trap. That's the reason so many people spend years chasing and never actually arriving anywhere. Because you've given your power away to something outside of yourself. When you make external validation the prize, you're running on a treadmill you can't get off. Think about it. Even if you win someone's approval, even if you gain their attention, how long does it last? How long before your mind says, now what? What if I lose it? What if they don't see me the same way tomorrow? That constant need to prove, to chase, to be seen, it's exhausting, and it will never fill you, because you're trying to solve an internal emptiness with an external answer. You cannot fill a hole in your soul with someone else's applause. The shift happens when you decide to flip the script. When you stop saying, they're the prize, and start declaring, I'm the prize. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. That's truth, because here's what you've forgotten, you already bring something to the table. You have skills, strengths, scars that shaped you, lessons that refined you, resilience that carried you. You've already walked through fire that would have broken others, but you're still here. You think you need someone else's stamp of approval to validate your existence. No, you've been tested by life itself. You've earned your worth simply by rising every time you've been knocked down. When you stop chasing, you start building. You start focusing on developing yourself into someone unshakable. You train your mind to stop seeking permission. You strengthen your body to feel powerful in your own skin. You feed your spirit with things that align with your values, not someone else's expectations. And then, without even trying, you become magnetic. Because here's the paradox: people chase people who aren't chasing. People are drawn to those who carry themselves like they already know their value, like they don't need to beg for attention, like they could walk away from any situation and still stand tall. Look at any person who seems unstoppable. They're not the ones desperate to be chosen. They're the ones who chose themselves first. They put in the work, the discipline, the sacrifice to build a foundation so solid that no rejection could shake them. They didn't become the prize by chance. They became the prize by choice, by deciding that their energy, their time, their life is too valuable to waste begging for scraps of validation. And it's not just about confidence, it's about responsibility. Because when you make yourself the prize, you stop living passively. You stop waiting for someone to come and hand you value. You recognize that your life is your responsibility. Your growth, your healing, your success, your joy, it's all in your hands. And when you take that seriously, you start showing up differently. You stop needing to be noticed and start focusing on becoming undeniable. So the question isn't, how do I make them see my worth? The question is, when am I going to start seeing my own? Because the day you see yourself clearly, the day you realize you're already the prize, is the day the chase ends. That's when the game changes. That's when you stop begging to be picked and start choosing yourself. That's when you stop handing out discounts on your value and start raising your standards. That's when you stop being an option and start living like the opportunity. Most people spend their lives locked in a cycle of chasing approval, acceptance, or recognition because they've been conditioned to believe that validation comes from outside. They tie their identity to whether someone says yes to them, whether someone acknowledges their effort, whether someone decides they're worthy, and when that approval doesn't come, they feel empty, rejected, and lost. But the truth is, the moment you let someone else's opinion define your value, you've handed them the keys to your life. You've allowed them to dictate how high you can rise and how far you can go. You weren't created to live life on someone else's terms. You weren't designed to shrink yourself so others could feel comfortable or to live small because you're waiting for permission to be big. Every time you hold back because you're afraid of being judged, you're betraying the part of you that knows you're meant for more. The real tragedy isn't the rejection you're afraid of. It's the life you never lived because you let rejection stop you before you even started. The shift happens when you realize that approval is not a requirement for progress. Approval is not a condition for success. Every person who has achieved anything significant has done it while being misunderstood, doubted, criticized, and even mocked. Think about it. Visionaries were called crazy. Pioneers were told they were wasting their time. Leaders were told they weren't enough. But they kept moving not because others believed in them, but because they believed in themselves. That's the mindset you need to cultivate. Moving forward even when no one claps, even when no one believes, even when no one validates your worth. When you anchor yourself, worth in your own belief, you become unstoppable. Suddenly, rejection doesn't sting the same way because you know it doesn't define you. Criticism doesn't derail you because you know who you are. Silence doesn't discourage you because you know the value of your own voice. This is the freedom that comes with self-belief. It removes the chains of needing constant reassurance. It allows you to act boldly, take risks, and move forward, not because the world gave you permission, but because you decided it was your time. And here's the truth. People can feel when you don't believe in yourself. They can sense when you're desperate for validation, when you're chasing their approval, when you're performing instead of living authentically. That energy repels respect. But when you stand in your own certainty, when you carry yourself with quiet confidence that doesn't beg but declares, people notice. They may not always agree with you, but they can't ignore you. They may not always understand you, but they can't deny your presence. This is why it's so dangerous to live for applause. Applause fades, opinions change, people project their own fears, insecurities, and limitations onto you. If you let that shape your life, you'll never know who you really are or what you're really capable of. You'll always be a reflection of someone else's expectations. But when you root yourself in your own conviction, when you decide that you are enough as you are, and that your growth, your dreams, your vision matter, you stop being swayed by the noise. You move with clarity and power because your compass is internal, not external. The greatest breakthroughs in your life won't come when everyone around you agrees. They'll come when you're willing to walk alone with your own belief, when you're willing to be misunderstood in pursuit of what matters. When you stop asking, "Do they think I can?" and start declaring, "I know I will." That's the moment life opens up. That's the moment opportunities that once seemed out of reach start moving toward you. Because the universe doesn't respond to doubt. It responds to certainty, and certainty begins with you deciding right now that you no longer need to be chosen, validated, or approved. You already are enough. You already are capable. You already are the one who gets to decide how far you go. The mistake so many people make is putting others on a pedestal, as if their value depends on whether someone else recognizes it. They treat another person's attention, love, or approval as the ultimate prize, and in the process, they minimize their own worth. They chase, they beg, they compromise, all for the hope that someone else will see them as worthy. But here's the truth. When you live that way, you've already lost, because you're giving away the very thing that makes you powerful, your ability to choose yourself. When you start building yourself, everything changes. Instead of chasing people, you shift your energy toward becoming someone who doesn't need to chase. You pour your time, your effort, your discipline into developing skills, strengthening your mindset, raising your standards. You stop obsessing over who sees you and start focusing on who you're becoming. Because the real prize is not someone else. It's the version of you that shows up when you finally decide to invest in yourself. That's the person who commands respect without asking for it, who attracts opportunities instead of begging for them, who walks into a room and changes the energy simply by being there. When you build yourself, you stop negotiating your worth for breadcrumbs of validation. You stop running after people who don't see your value, because you know your value doesn't decrease just because someone else can't recognize it. You begin to set boundaries, and boundaries are powerful. They're not about keeping people out. They're about making space for the right people to come in. When you draw that line, when you declare, "I won't settle for less than what I deserve," you stop living in scarcity and step into abundance. You stop tolerating the toxic, the draining, and the small-minded, because you've raised your standards too high to entertain anything that doesn't align with your vision. The irony is, the moment you stop chasing, people notice. They feel the shift. They sense that you no longer need them to complete you, and suddenly they're drawn to you in ways they never were before. Because confidence is magnetic. Self-respect is powerful. When you walk in your own certainty, you naturally attract the right relationships, the right opportunities, the right people who respect you for who you are instead of for what you can give them. But this only happens when you stop looking outward and start building inward. The greatest investment you will ever make is not in pleasing others, not in getting them to choose you, but in building yourself into the person who no longer needs to be chosen. The person who is grounded, unshakable, and self-assured. That's the person who wins. That's the person who stops living at the mercy of other people's opinions and starts creating a life that can't be ignored. Think about it. If you spend your whole life chasing, you'll always be behind. You'll always be reacting, waiting for someone to tell you you're enough. But when you flip the script and build yourself, you lead. You move from a place of strength, not desperation. You stop needing to prove yourself because your growth speaks louder than your words ever could. You become undeniable not because someone else finally validated you, but because you've validated yourself through action, through discipline, through consistency. This is why the work must begin within. This is why you can't keep postponing your growth until someone else believes in you. No one else can live your life. No one else can carry your vision. No one else can give you the power you refuse to claim. The moment you stop putting people on a pedestal and start building yourself, you reclaim that power. You stop being a follower and become the architect of your own destiny. And the truth is, people who are truly alive, people who are fulfilled and empowered, don't waste their lives chasing. They build, they create, they rise, and in doing so, they show the world what it looks like when someone decides they are the prize.